Okay, thank you for your kind words. No idea what you said, but thanks anyway. I want to talk to you about playful learning today. But first, just a small introduction about myself. I graduated interaction designer, and I was always really passionate about, what motivates people. What are their passions? What makes them tick? What do they think is really interesting? So if you combine these two, interaction design and passion, you actually get to games. So there's tons of interaction in games, and as you all know, people can be extremely passionate about gaming. So I kind of dived into this field of game design, and I started actually 3 companies. First one being Creative Seeds, where I do gamification consultancy. Game-driven innovations, there on the bottom left, which is all about building bridges between the game industry and the non-game industry. But also a year ago, I started EduApp, which is a online product. It's a platform about new ways of learning. But again, to talk about playful learning. So I was diving into this subject, and I was wondering, what is playful learning, and what do people think is playful learning? So I did a quick Google image search. That's kind of the way to figure out what it is. And apparently, the world, we all think it has something to do with, you can't really see it properly, but it has something to do with children, it has something to do with colors, it has something to do with fun, so lots of joy, lots of creativity. But is that playful learning? Because if you look at this image, so, okay, it's a bit dark, but you see this girl studying in her math book, solving this extremely difficult assignment, which probably is really frustrating because she cannot find the answer, but at this certain point she does find the answer, and she's really happy, so there's lots of joy there. So this is definitely learning, but can this be playful as well? Can we call this playful learning? Or on the other side, video games. Video games are for sure playful. I mean, we play video games, we love to play video games, and they really motivate us. But can we learn anything from video games? So can we call this playful learning? It's obvious that gamers have a lot of motivation when playing video games. And apparently research has been done, and this is quoting from 2009, but actually there's already research being done in the 70s about motivation, and apparently students tend to learn a lot better and are far more creative when they're motivated, when they're intrinsically motivated. So what does this mean? So if we look at ourselves as being children, there was a time in our lives that we were extremely playful, right? We were playing outside. And there was this free space to play in. So we could play in the sandpit, we could figure out what we wanted to play. We could build this black castle, be the knight in that black castle. We could do whatever we wanted. So there was free space to play. You didn't have to play, you could think whatever you wanted to play. And when we were playing, you could be getting better at something. So you would improve. You would set ourselves targets, and we try to get to those targets. We would try to get better at something. So we were learning. So we were learning, for instance, communication skills. But we were also creating this meaningful story. So this black castle, we were actually that knight who had to save the princess. And for us, it was really meaningful. Like, we were really into that story, and we were playing those stories. So these 3 elements, free space to play in, to get better at something, and those meaningful stories, are actually really important elements for motivation. And actually, if you look at successful video games, so take World of Warcraft, for example, extremely successful, of course, you'll see these 3 elements in these video games. So there's a strategy to define. You can influence the outcome, so therefore it's a free space to play. You can choose for yourself how you want to play the game. You don't have to play the game, or you don't have to do it a certain way. You can choose for yourself. You can get better at something, and video games really show a clear progress of how good you're at a certain time in the game. And for the players, it's extremely meaningful. So there's these stories which are being told in the game, and for the players, it's really meaningful. It's really about saving the princess. Maybe not so meaningful for society always, but extremely meaningful for those players playing in that game. So you see these 3 elements. So it's no wonder that Daniel Pink, for instance, wrote a book about marketing, actually, about what thrives us. And he talked about, so if you want to intrinsically motivate people, you need autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Those three elements. So now we know what makes games motivating. But the question is, of course, can we apply this theory also to something else, for education, for instance? So when does learning become playful? That is actually to apply these three elements to learning: autonomy, mastery, and meaning or purpose. So let me go through them. What do they mean? Autonomy. So if you look at this diagram, at the top there is extrinsic control. That means control being is not inside of you, so you're being controlled. And at the bottom there's intrinsic control, so control you have yourself. So autonomy is at the bottom. So if you can control yourself, you can be autonomous. But that can happen within a structure or without a structure. So even within a structure you can control yourself. And if you look at games, Minecraft, for example, extremely popular game, there's a lot of autonomy here. So you can build whatever you want in this game. So there's a lot of autonomy here. But it's control within a structure. So the game designer here made this structure. Still, there's a lot of autonomy. And because of this structure and this autonomy and this influence you can have yourself, creativity pops up, actually. You need both, and you need a good balance. So for instance, these kind of things are being built in Minecraft. So the complete pyramids are being built in Minecraft and are actually improved. So it's not only being copying from the real world, but being improved. So little boys and girls actually play this game and build super creative things. And it's because of those balance between structure and influence. So games are in the lower left quadrant of this diagram. But what if we look at education? If we look at education, actually most of education is on the top of this diagram. Exams, grades, learning goals, they're kind of being you're as a student being extrinsically controlled by education. Electives, that's a bit autonomous, but it's not that much. So education should be far more on the bottom side of this diagram. Next, mastery. So how does this work? So what happens in games always is that games have certain goals, and it's always being divided in short term, medium term, and long term. Short term, for instance, being gain 5 points, for instance. Medium as being finish this level. Long term, for instance, saving the princess, or whatever goal there is in the game. But there's always this short-term goal you're working for, but in the back of your mind you know what the long-term goal is. You're always trying to work for the long term. And these goals are not just goals behind each other, they're gradually increasing in difficulty. So Angry Birds, for instance, you know, if I would tell you, okay, I know a game where you have to shoot pigs with birds, you would probably think, okay, that's the stupid game ever, I'm not going to play that. Still, super successful game, and one of those reasons is the fact that they gradually increase difficulty of levels, which is extremely important. So in the beginning it's simple structure, then all the pigs get helmets, and in the end it's almost impossible, but extremely difficult. So in game design we call this flow, which means that in the beginning you don't have a lot of skills yet. You don't want the difficulty of the task you need to do to be too difficult, because otherwise you get a certain aversion towards the game. But in the end of the game, after you've played several levels, you don't want it to be too easy, because then boredom sets in. You would think, okay, this is a stupid easy game, and you don't play it anymore. And this is actually exactly the case for education as well. So in education, it's extremely important to give the right task, the right challenge, to the right student at the right time. And it's really important that all these tasks, all these small tasks, would lead eventually to a bigger task, a big goal. And this is not happening enough in education. So something you see is that students do not get the right challenges. So sometimes it's way too difficult, sometimes it's way too easy. Third up, meaning. Meaning comes actually in three forms. First one being relatedness, which means you can have a certain relation to a game. So games are always really good in giving feedback, and giving feedback at the right moment, and giving really positive feedback. One of the reasons why Candy Crush is so popular is that it's giving positive feedback exactly at the right moment. So people tend to play the game over and over because they want to receive that feedback. Almost sometimes human-like feedback. They want to receive it. But it also comes in another form, and that's through social interactions. So board games, for instance, are really important within the family context. People play board games because of the social interactions, because they can be together with their family, and that's really important. That's why they keep on playing. Or the third, and there's a little movie here, the third being creating a meaning to a task, and it could be a fictional meaning as well. So for instance, an extremely simple task as putting a nail in a little bit of wood can be really hard, but if you add fictional meaning to it, it can become easier. Just a small video is going to work. Is there a video? There's no video. Damn. Okay, no video. You have to look it up. It's a commercial from Hornbach, and this guy is putting a nail into a piece of wood, which he doesn't succeed in, but then he figures there's like 1 million people looking at him when he's doing that, and he makes this humongous story around it, and then he does succeed. So it's extremely funny. Just check it out. It's somewhere on YouTube. So these three elements, human-like, positive feedback, these social connections, but also this fictional meaning is extremely important to education as well. So the old days actually of education are not suffice anymore. They don't suffice anymore. Where the teacher was always being the expert in the class, actually it kind of changes. So because of Google, actually Google is the expert in the class nowadays, the student knows so much, and often the student has to explain to the teacher how something works instead of the other way around. And you see this in different fields. So you see this in health, for instance, as well. You know, if you go to a doctor, you often kind of debate on what he says to you, what you have, because you can Google it as well, right? So why do you want to hear it from the doctor? So the thing is that the old ways of education don't work anymore, and we need to look for new ways. So it's not only about gaining knowledge, it's also about creativity. We have to learn students how to become creative and how to find information themselves. So to recap, research showed us that you learn far better when you're intrinsically motivated. So it's easier to remember, and you're more creative when you're motivated. How do you do this? You do this 3 ways. First, autonomy. You have to offer choice. The student needs to have the feeling of control. This happens in games as well. You need to influence the outcome. You need to be able to do that. You have to offer the right challenge, so the right levels, the right amount of difficulty at the right time. Really important. And thirdly, the context should be meaningful. Only then you're motivated to learn what you need to learn. So if we do those things, I think learning can become playful. Thank you.